and begs leave to sit again.
Carried. We have now reached the hour of interruption, and the subject for late debate has been chosen earlier, submitted by the honourable member for Digby-Annapolis. The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm pleased to rise in my place tonight and speak to the resolution, therefore be it resolved, that the NDP government's education funding cuts are being felt in classrooms across the province, and we call on the government to invest in our students and restore funding to public education. Mr. Speaker, the issue of education and funding to education, the importance of education, have been debated in this House, and I don't think anybody would disagree that our future is very much linked to the education of our people. We often talk about Nova Scotia being the education capital. That is in reference not just to public education, but to our post-secondary. And we have stated repeatedly that economists are telling us that in difficult times, in times of restraint, one of the last places that governments should look for savings would be in education. And I think that message is understood, but our fear is, and it's not been, and what's been demonstrated by the current government is just the opposite. We do have a good public school education system, but it can always be better. And one of the priorities for any government when they're looking at education is try to identify the student needs and to respond to those needs. And those needs, Mr. Speaker, range from the earliest needs of our youngest students who are learning to read, to our graduates who are needing the skills that will allow them to go on to post-secondary or to employment so that they can become active and productive citizens. It is their ability to earn and give back to the economy of the province that will help us move forward. So the importance of education cannot be underestimated. The frustrating part for Nova Scotians is to see cuts made to funding to public education based on a business model, not on an education and student needs model. And as long as the government continues to believe that they can adjust their funding based on enrollment, we will never be able to adequately meet the needs of those students in our schools. That's a sad situation. It's one that we in our Liberal caucus have been fighting against. We're trying to get the government to acknowledge their mistake. And if they don't want to listen to us, I think it's important that they listen to teachers and parents and the education partners and our school community who are telling them the same thing. When you have, Mr. Speaker, a petition that's signed by over 16,000 people who are asking the government to stop cutting the funding to education, it's not just the members in opposition. It's the community, it's the parents, it's the students, it's the teachers who are saying to this government, stop it, enough is enough. It is having a negative impact on our ability to deliver quality programs and on the ability of our students in our classroom to get the skills they need. And we have, you know, we've looked at over 2 years about a $65 million hit to our public schools. And, you know, it's easy for the government to say, well, we're only decreasing the funding by 1.7 or 2.1 or whatever the number is. But in reality, Mr. Speaker, the cost to the school boards are much greater than that. We know that that funding does not include anything for inflationary costs. It does not address the rising cost in wages and benefits. And ironically enough, the contracts for our teachers and our other members of our employ, whether they're NSGEU or CUPE, those contracts are negotiated by the government. And so the final outcome, whether it's a 2% increase, 1%, whatever it is, that's negotiated. But then the boards are asked to pay that, but they're not given the money to pay that extra burden that they will have. So, it's kind of putting school boards in a very difficult position. I'll negotiate what you have to pay, but I'm not going to give you any money to pay it. And that system simply is not working. And when school boards are faced with that, that brings their 1.7 or 2.1 budget cut up in some cases to 3 or 4 or even close to 5% reduction. And it's quite misleading, I think, when people see an announcement that says South Shore Board or Chignecto or Strait Board cut by 1.7%. And some people think, oh, well, gee, that's not too bad. But they don't go on to read the fine print, which says, plus they must incur all of the costs, all of the inflationary costs, which drive it up. And so the boards are struggling with that. They've been asked, and I think boards have complied with the request to reduce the number of administrators in central office, to reduce the number of consultants. They've been asked to take out math and literacy mentors. Those kinds of positions, which the government believed were adding extra cost, boards have complied with that, and they've taken those positions, but it still has not been enough money for them to protect programs for kids. And I will use one example is the funding for special education. And we hear that, the minister is saying, we have increased the amount of money for special education. But again, what she fails to go on to say is that boards will accept the increased funding for special education, but it still doesn't match what they spend on special education. So every year there's a gap between what the government gives them for funding for special education and what they pay themselves, and they have to take that from somewhere, and that gap gets bigger and bigger. So when you look at the funding that a school board has at their disposal, about 85% of it goes out for wages and benefits without any decisions having to be made by the board. That's off their list right away. It leaves them about 15%. And when you have to look at accommodating all of the special needs that students have and their costly programs to meet special needs, for example, when you have a one-on-one, which is how some children need the support they need in order to learn, that's a costly program. But the cost of not doing it is something that we will pay for in this province long into the future, because those students who don't learn to read, who can't be successful in school, are highly unlikely to be successful in the workforce. They will be restricted from going on to post-secondary education. And so their ability to give back to the economy of the province through taxes that they would pay based on their earnings is severely limited, or it's gone. And that's the connection, Mr. Speaker, that this government fails to see. Investing in our students now will pay long-term benefits for this province forever and ever. And we don't have a lot of revenue coming into our province. We need to have people who can earn a good wage and contribute back to the economy. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that failing the kids in our province by not adequately funding their education will be a price that this province has to pay in the future. And it saddens me to think that we have a government that doesn't recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member for Hammonds Plains, Upper Sackville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I think for everybody to stick around tonight for the late show. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this important subject that we all know is near and dear to each and every one of our hearts when it comes to the education of our young people. And there are a lot of things that I would concur with the honourable member opposite in regards to all of the different positive things that we should be doing in our province when it comes to education. My wife is a teacher herself. Putting the kids in learning is quite important first to her and to all of her colleagues that she teaches with. And one of the things that I know the minister in this government certainly agrees with is the hard work that our teachers and our administration do in this province. They are there to to give guidance to our young people, to ensure that they have a bright future here and hopefully here in this province. But you know, one of the things that is also important is the role of parents and how they play an important role as well. We have a system here in this province that is quite frankly world class, and we want to ensure that by putting this plan in place, this Kids and Learning First plan, we will ensure that we put the fundamentals that kids need in this province in everything that we do, in every piece of curriculum, in every classroom across the province. Now the reality is that we can't just keep spending and spending and spending and spending. People would say we need to cut spending on one hand, but we can't increase revenues on the other hand. So one of the things that I know the opposition would say is, look, you're cutting here, you're cutting these services. I would say that we're increasing the per student funding in this province, that the highest it's ever been. We need to ensure that we have efficiencies within every department, within every government service that we have. That's what I believe Nova Scotians elected us to do. Nova Scotia, doesn't matter what party you come from, people want to know that as a steward of their money, of the money that is given to them, to the government through their taxes, that the province looks after their money, ensures that it's spent wisely, and quite frankly, efficiency and is efficient as well. Previous governments have spent more and more on fewer and fewer and fewer students. We've seen this X graph that has been out into many different publications. The fact that we have 30,000 less students than we did 10 years ago. Spending has gone up continuously. We need to ensure that we have this proper mechanism, this proper amount of money that's going into the classroom. Actually, this morning I had a great conversation with one of the local principals at one of the schools of the area that I represent. And, you know, we had quite a long conversation, probably about a half an hour. And, you know, we've been trying to touch base actually for about a week now. Of course, we were playing phone tag with us being here these long days and quite not, just playing a little bit of phone tag. And one of the things that he said, and he did bring up some concerns, some of these things that are out in the media, and some of the things that some of some of the opposition to some of the government's plans. And I just said, look, the reality is exactly what I had just said. And he says, I see it. He's been in the system for 20 years. He said, we have to ensure the proper mechanisms in place. So he said to me, what about special needs funding? I said, well, in fact, if you look at the formula overall, school boards across the province, in fact, saw an increase in special education funding to ensure that is there. And he says, well, we just want to make sure that kids aren't falling through the cracks. And I said, I agree. And I said to him, so next year, you've pretty much put in your numbers for next year. So I said, how many teachers, how many classrooms will you have in your school versus this year? How many specialty teachers will you have versus this year? How many EPAs will you have versus this year? And he says, based on the numbers of population and based on the formula that the board has asked them to submit, he will see zero reduction of FTEs. Of FTEs. He will see a zero reduction in FTEs. And I said, okay, so does that mean your class sizes will go up? He says, well, let's not forget that between myself, the member from Bedford Birch Cove, and probably the member for Halifax Clayton Park, we have probably one of the largest growing populations in the province. And he said that, right now, currently, the population is probably going to increase by about 15 kids. Is kind of where the for the whole overall school. But he says the teachers will stay the same, and the largest class that he'll probably have is 25. Okay, and that's at grade 5, I think he said. So he said. So I asked him. I said, "Are you actually going to see any sort of decrease in service for the students that go to that school?" And he said, at this point in time, and every indication from the board level is no. So I said to him, I appreciate you kind of sharing some of that information with me. I appreciate that. And I said, well, I might be doing a debate tonight, and I mentioned to him that I would do that, and mention that story. So we as a government want to ensure that we have this level of funding that ensures that every kid has a level of service, and has a level of service not only to get just kind of get a base level, to ensure that every kid can succeed. And so that we want to ensure that we prepare our young people for the jobs for the future, which in Nova Scotia over the next 30 years we know is going to be coming from the Ship Start Here program, as well as the other priorities that young people and their parents want. We want to make sure that their schools have the resources available to them that need to be provided, because the most important room in our schools is the classroom. We have increased the per student funding. Our ratios continue to be low. So these are the types of things that I think is, when I talk to constituents, and quite frankly, there's been a few of them. There hasn't been a load of phone calls into my constituency office. Now I'm sure maybe after I say that, there might be a few coming out. And so, I think that, and this is the type of thing that I want to remind Nova Scotians, is that MLAs are there to hear their concerns. And I know whenever someone calls my office, and I usually have this kind of rule that I would usually call people back within a 12, 15-hour period, and they say, holy cow, you actually called me back. And I didn't expect that. So, that's something that I think we should do. If people see something that concerns them, they should contact their MLA. They should contact, especially if they live in my constituency, I would encourage them to call me to have a conversation, because that's what we're here for. It's not about opposing here and I have one view and they have another view. It's about having a conversation about how, because oftentimes those people who do call our MLA offices, they really, really do care about their community that they live in, and they want to ensure the best, whether it's through education, whether it's through their healthcare system, whatever it may be. They really do care about their community. And so if they do, I encourage them to contact me to have a conversation with me, and oftentimes we hopefully be able to solve it. So in closing, I want to ensure all Nova Scotians who may be watching here today that I'm certainly proud of our government and how we've put books in the hands of families, giving them age-appropriate literacy supports, because we all know not every family can spend what they would like on books and other educational tools. We are working to making sure that our children have the necessary tools and supports needed to ensure that every kid in Nova Scotia can succeed and build a life in their community that they grew up in. And I appreciate the opportunity to have the debate here today. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you. The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm pleased to rise this evening to speak to this resolution. Therefore, be it resolved that the NDP's cuts to education funding are being felt in the classrooms across the province, and we call on this government to invest in their students and restore funding to the public education system. Well, Mr. Speaker, if I could, I'd love to ask the member from Hammonds Plains Upper Sackville if he could give me his office number, because I can send a pile of different phone calls there that we're getting from the educators, from the students, and from the parents. And most of all, we're getting it from the school boards, from the people who are having to do the cuts, who are having to make the tough decisions. Mr. Speaker, I spoke with a number of different school boards over the last little while, and they're miffed at the fact that they're asked to cut 2% and 3% from their budget after in the second year, after last year having to do the same thing. And they found the efficiencies last year without too much cut to the classrooms and to the actual people who are necessary in the school system to educate our children. But this year, those efficiencies are harder to come by. And I'm hearing about teachers' cuts. I'm hearing about TA cuts. I'm hearing about support staff cuts. And if the member from Hammonds Plains Upper Sackville wants to give us his number, I'm sure that the people of the Cape Breton School Board, the Chignecto School Board, and the South Shore Board that I'm listening to would gladly call his office and see if they can give him the same explanation. Because as they say, our school system is declining in enrollment. And because of that, cuts are being made, but the cuts are being made deeper than the enrollment part. And he also spoke about not cutting spending, but not raising revenues. But Mr. Speaker, this government has cut spending to the education system, but it's also raised revenues. And we've had a talk in this House already that by putting 2% in the HST in 2 years, each and every individual in the province of Nova Scotia has paid over $700 in increased HST, which is over $4,000 per household. And in saying that, if that's not an increase in revenues, I don't know what is. And where is that money going? We know it's not going to the educational system because the cuts are happening there. We know it's not going to the healthcare system, the cuts are happening there. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to read a quote from the great Benjamin Franklin that states, "If a man empties his purse into his head, no man can take that away. An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest." And Mr. Speaker, we know that if we're going to build a good workforce in this province and have good people take over from what we're doing here, we have to have a good foundation. And Mr. Speaker, the foundation for our children in this province is our education. We know when we build a house, we don't start without a good foundation because the house will crumble. And if our children aren't getting this education to prepare them for the real world, the working world, then they're going to fail as well. And Mr. Speaker, I'm hearing numbers in this House like the fact that the government has increased the funding per student to over $10,000 per student. And I'm also hearing that there's 30,000 less students in the system. So my question to that one, Mr. Speaker, is if there's 30,000 less students and the funding was to remain the same, of course it has to go up. It would seem like it's up. But I have no indication there's any new, real money being put into the system. We know the budgets have actually gone down. We've discussed them in the last little while in the House here. Also, if we're decreasing the number of students, and we're talking about increasing the number of teachers, then our class sizes should be going down. And I know in the schools that my children have went to, they've had class sizes, some of them well over 30. And if you increase that, then that's not going down. We hear that the number of students in the elementary school is going to increase from a maximum of 27 to 29. And if the ratio they're talking about increasing the number of teachers and decreasing the number of students, then there should be no need to raise that number from 27 to 29. And when that red number is raised to 29, Nova Scotia will have one of the highest caps on the education system in the country. Now, Mr. Speaker, these NDP cuts are devastating. Kids are protesting. Teachers and parents are also worried about the future of our education system and our children. Nova Scotians are appalled by the actions of this government in respect to health care and education. And we know that something needs to change. Mr. Speaker, if we remove the public school funding from the estimates in the Department of Education, we actually see an increase of about 3.69% for the Education Department. How can that Education Department funding be going up and funding the school systems going down? Our classrooms are being heavily affected. And Mr. Speaker, our special needs children, we talk about special needs. Schools like Landmark East and Bridgeway Academy, they have a grant provided to them. A grant for a child that needs to go to that school to get his education so he can be fit back into the regular education system. And we were told in this House by the Education Minister that her, as a special education teacher herself, had a child of her own that they couldn't teach in the classroom that went to Landmark East and had great success with it. Now we're told that they can't do that education in the regular school system, but they don't want to increase the funding to schools like that. Now, Mr. Speaker, the education system is arguably the most important part of our society. Now let's be clear. Our children are our most valuable resource. We talk in this House about forestry and mining and wind, all valuable resources. And Mr. Speaker, we spend a great deal of money to develop these powers, these resources. So why don't we spend this money, why don't we spend more money on developing our most valuable resources? And we know that's our children. So we shouldn't be cutting that money from the education system. These children are the future of our province. And without them growing up with a proper, useful, and meaningful education, our future will be lost. We need an education system that prepares our children for what lies ahead in their future. We need to let them strive to be what they want to be and let their ambitions take them as high as they can. And Mr. Speaker, I feel that an decrease in our education funding will prevent some of our children from doing this. As again Benjamin Franklin said, knowledge is an investment that pays dividends down the road. Benefits from such an education: decreased reliance on health care, a decreased crime, they lead to better employment, better interpersonal skills. We need to allow our students to achieve whatever goals they'd like, be that a skilled trade person, so that we can take advantage of our newly shipbuilding contract. Be it in preparation for a university degree, because we know because of the shipbuilding contract, we're going to need engineers and supervisors and so on and so forth to take full advantage of this. As we have seen, these cuts to the education budgets have been putting a strain on our school boards and putting them into very awkward situations of having to make very difficult decisions. In 2011, we saw cuts of 2.4% to 4 of our school boards. And now in 2012, we saw another 2.1% to 3 of those 4. They are forced to make cuts that will, and I repeat, will affect our children. Cuts to teachers and teachers' assistants, support staff, will affect our education in one form or another. Mr. Speaker, we don't think it's fair to work on balancing the budget on the backs of our children and our education system. A child with an education, such as a doctor or a nurse, they have all the options in the world, and they can stay here or they can leave. And if they're going to raise a family here, Mr. Speaker, they want to do that with a good education system. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the honourable members that took part in late debate tonight for an excellent debate. I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I just thought the Minister of Health is still up, but no, but that's not factual. Could you please call the estimates for the Minister of Economic Development?
Estimates for the Minister of Economic Development, Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Aye.
Motion is carried. We will now take I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, apparently we got to ask you to resolve the House to go into the Committee on Supply.
Committee in the whole House on Supply. Motion carried. Now we will take a short recess to allow the Minister's staff to set up in the chamber.
Order, please. Committee of the whole House on Supply will come to order. I now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, could you please call the estimates for E4, E25, E41, and any others that may be applicable to this minister? Thank you.
Thank you. I now call those resolutions, as I didn't write them down. I would now recognize the Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism for opening remarks, and perhaps if he has the time to introduce the staff that are with him today. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's nice for me to rise this evening and talk about the estimates for economic and rural development and tourism. However, before I do proceed, I've been requested on behalf of the Minister of Health. She mentioned during her estimates that she would like to table something, and I will table that on her behalf. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this year's budget for economic and rural development and tourism and the valuable work that's being done by our staff. I am pleased to have several colleagues with me here today. I am joined by Simone D'Entremont, the new Deputy Minister for Economic and Rural Development and Tourism, and Joyce McDonald, Director of Finance. There are also a number of senior staff from the department and our agencies in the gallery this evening. I'd like to welcome Stephen Lunn, President and CEO of Nova Scotia Business Inc., Colin McLean, President and CEO of the Waterfront Development Corporation, Scott Ferguson, President and CEO of Trade Center Limited. Of course, not all of the staff can join us here this evening in the gallery. However, our department is served by dedicated and hardworking people in branches which include investment and trade, regional planning and development, productivity and innovation, tourism, procurement, policy and planning, the Nova Scotia Gateway Secretariat, and of course, supported by finance, human resources, and communications. And I want to take a very, very brief moment to thank each and every one of them for their hard work and their dedication to Nova Scotians. Not too long ago, Nova Scotia was facing a bleak economic future. 20 years of slow economic growth behind us now, and an inability to keep up with a changing global market. Today, we find ourselves in a much different situation, a positive situation, a situation that breeds optimism for the future of Nova Scotia. Our province now finds itself on the cusp of some new real game changers that have the potential to create a better future for all Nova Scotians. Opportunities that will enable this province to face the future with confidence. These game changers are the development of hydroelectric power out of Lower Churchill, the construction of the maritime transmission link, linking power from Lower Churchill to Nova Scotia, the dredging of Sydney Harbour and development in the Port of Sydney, the commitment of Shell Canada to explore Nova Scotia's offshore, and of course, the federal shipbuilding contract. These are unlike any that we have ever seen before. While we ramp ourselves up for the undoubtedly exciting times ahead and prepare to take advantage of these opportunities, we also recognize that some industries face challenges in remaining competitive. Over the last year, the new Page Mill in Point Tupper and the Bullwater Mill in Liverpool have faced difficult financial times and an uncertain future. The province naturally banded together to offer help and support to the forestry industry. We authorized $23.75 million for the land purchase of Bullwater Mercy and a $25 million forgivable capital loan for energy efficiency projects. We also authorized $1.5 million for employee training through the Productivity Investment Program. For New Page, the province authorized $26 million for the Forestry Infrastructure Fund to support the wood supply chain. We are committed to helping the forestry industry, and this budget helps us to take on these challenges. The 2012-13 budget for economic and rural development and tourism is $187.3 million. This is an increase of $61.74 million over the 2011-2012 departmental budget. This increase is primarily due to an increase in the Nova Scotia Jobs Fund and an increase in funding to further implement jobs here. This year, our department has a total of $72.58 million for the Nova Scotia Jobs Fund. This budget will be used to assist the forestry industry in Nova Scotia, helping to support thousands of forest jobs and help grow the economy in rural communities. The Nova Scotia Jobs Fund will also be used to support opportunities in shipbuilding, opportunities in fisheries, and opportunities in manufacturing. This will create good jobs and grow our economy. An industry that will require a lot of attention is, of course, shipbuilding, and the many, many professionals and sectors that will support the federal shipbuilding contract. These shipbuilding contracts represent the single most important opportunity Nova Scotia has ever seen to create jobs and propel our economy into the future. Just last month, government was finally able to announce the role the province played in the success of the Irving bid. As part of Irving's successful bid, and in order to ensure jobs, training, and spin-offs for Nova Scotians, the province of Nova Scotia committed to invest more than $300 million in Irving shipbuilding over the next 30 years. This was the single largest investment in jobs and growing the economy in Nova Scotia's history. This financial assistance package includes a forgivable loan worth up to $260 million and a repayable marine industry loan worth $44 million for human resource development, technology, and industrial development. This represents just 6% of the tax revenue the province expects to receive in return. This investment will produce a return on investment for the province that will generate billions of dollars for taxpayers. Without this investment, we would not be facing 30 years of sustainable jobs for thousands of Nova Scotians and spin-off opportunities for many more of us not directly involved in shipbuilding. As part of the agreement, Irving Shipbuilding will contribute $250,000 a year over the next 30. This will support the Irving Shipbuilding Center of Excellence at the Nova Scotia Community College. This investment will help train and retain the best shipbuilders in the world and will provide information on careers in shipbuilding with an emphasis on recruiting and training Aboriginals, visible minorities, and women. The province will also work with Irving to develop an early apprenticeship program and a 10-year workforce plan to ensure Nova Scotians are aware of future opportunities. Our education and training institutions are now in a position to plan and deliver on relevant training. Madam Chair, we have reason to celebrate in this province, not just because of opportunities such as the Irving bid, but because today we have an economic plan in place that will help take advantage of these game changers to the best of our abilities. Jobs Here, the plan to grow our economy, has been in place for over a year. And, Madam Chair, we have seen the results. We are making great strides in helping businesses all over the province succeed and to prosper. With Jobs Here, hundreds of businesses from Sydney to Yarmouth have become more innovative, have become globally competitive, and have trained their employees. With the help of Jobs Here, we are on a positive path. Nova Scotia has the lowest unemployment rate in Atlantic Canada. Compared to this time last year, Nova Scotia employment is up by 3,300 jobs. And the Department of Finance's numbers indicate that the year-to-date unemployment rates for every region are below what they were last year. Furthermore, Madam Chair, our budget's economic forecast projects the unemployment rate will continue to fall. Because of Jobs Here, government has the flexibility to respond to changes in economic conditions. We have the ability now to capitalize on opportunities such as Irving. In addition, we will continue to work with the economic development agencies and our partners within and outside of government to achieve these priorities. Last year, under Jobs Here, Madam Chair, the province launched a series of strategies and initiatives to help businesses and individuals succeed. This year, the focus will be on putting the strategies into action, which requires additional funding. Part of this action includes programs such as the Business Development Program, the establishment of the Major Investment and Projects Team, the Productivity and Innovation Voucher Accelerated Program, the Graduate Placement Program, and so many others. One of these other programs is the Productivity Investment Program, or more affectionately as we call it, PIP. Through PIP, the province has helped businesses in every region of the province become more productive, to become more innovative, to be more globally competitive and skilled, with investments in capital and workplace training. The forecast updates saw $16 million committed for PIP funding in capital and workplace training for 2011-12. The Workplace Innovation and Productivity Skills Incentive Stream of PIP helped more than 6,300 Nova Scotian employees get better trained last year, while the Capital Investment Incentive Stream of PIP saw $11.6 million of government funding leverage $52.4 million in new capital investments. Madam Chair, it was companies such as Copal International Limited, Oxford Frozen Foods, Texbox International Limited, Galloping Cows Farm Market and Fine Foods, and Cook's Dairy Farm that benefit from these investments. Madam Chair, because of PIP, Amherst-based manufacturing company Polycello will become more efficient and become more competitive in the global economy with a PIP investment for innovative new equipment. Through PIP, the province is able to contribute $1 million towards the purchase of a 10-color printing press, allowing Polycello to become more efficient and attract new customers. The province is also investing $90,600 for additional cost-saving equipment. The total value of the upgrade is almost $9 million. In addition, metal fabrication shop Mulgrave Machine Works in Guysborough County will receive $96,541 through PIP to update equipment and train workers. The company will receive $85,791 from the Capital Investment Incentive Stream of PIP for a new metal cutting machine, allowing specialized design cutting with more control and greater accuracy. The equipment will be used to meet the needs of clients in Canada, Cuba, and Brazil. Mulgrave Machine Works will also receive $10,750 from PIP's Workplace Innovation and Productivity Skills Incentive for training to manage human resources more effectively. Madam Chair, this year, PIP will receive a total of $25 million, helping more businesses make upgrades in machinery, clean technology, software, hardware, and employee skills training. Budget 2012 is helping Nova Scotia businesses to be more competitive globally. With the help of an additional $1.55 million this spring, we will launch the International Commerce Strategy. This is a strategy that will help us become more effectively to support the needs of businesses engaged in international activities. It will also increase the amount of two-way flow for trade, investment of skills, ideas, and innovation in and out of Nova Scotia. Great international work is already happening in Nova Scotia. We want to support these companies. We want to support them in being globally competitive and encourage other companies to do the same. This strategy will align Nova Scotia's trade and investment policy, program activities, and research priorities with the needs of internationally trading companies. And it will give a broader level of support to firms looking to enter the international market. Madam Chair, this budget also helps new graduates secure jobs right here in Nova Scotia, with $400,000 to implement the new graduate placement program. This program gives our students another reason to stay in Nova Scotia after graduating by helping them secure good jobs. The program will provide a 50% wage subsidy for the first 3 months of employment, up to a maximum of $7,500. The program is expected to support 50 job placements in 2012-13. The program encourages employers to hire recent cooperative education graduates in high-demand areas. It gives graduates the chance to develop the skills they need for good jobs. That is what Jobs Here is all about. Madam Chair, we have seen great success through our Productivity and Innovation Voucher program, which helps build and strengthen links between small businesses, universities, and colleges. Last year, 35 Nova Scotia businesses took advantage of this program. Those businesses are now working with universities and colleges to increase their productivity and to be more innovative. To build on the success of this program, we piloted the Productivity and Innovation Voucher Accelerated Program. This gives previous Voucher recipients $25,000 to access expertise at universities and colleges to further increase their productivity and their innovation. The vouchers will help the recipients explore new business opportunities, explore existing projects, and to refine their operations. This year, the Productivity and Innovation Voucher program will receive an additional $500,000, which will assist even more Nova Scotia businesses. Madam Chair, we've implemented the Nova Scotia Jobs Fund, which will help government pursue regional economic initiatives, support programs that provide assistance to small businesses, provide community economic stability where needed, and support investments in businesses, such as the thousands of jobs we're supporting at Bowater and Irving Shipbuilding. In December, Madam Chair, we launched a one-stop service for businesses looking for economic development programs and initiatives. Business.novascotia.ca is a web-based entry point to a broad range of economic development programs and services. It simplifies navigation and provides more efficient access to government programs, services, and information for businesses in Nova Scotia, and to those interested in investing in the province and growing our Nova Scotia economy. And while, Madam Speaker, this is a tremendous first step, we are working to build on this site to add more functionality and information for businesses. Budget 2012 will continue to support businesses. We'll continue to support business.novascotia.ca to create an integrated approach to economic development for businesses with $350,000 this year alone. This year's budget also gives $200,000 to develop a social enterprise strategy, which will support communities and businesses and enhance their contributions to Nova Scotia's economy. This government has also committed to provide loan guarantees for social enterprise with a pilot of up to $2 million. This two-year pilot program will provide a loan guarantee of 90% up to $150,000 for social enterprises through the network of credit unions and will be administered by the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council. The province's Community Economic Development Investment Funds, or CEDIFs, raise capital for a variety of interesting ventures throughout all of Nova Scotia. CEDIFs help keep investment dollars working in our Nova Scotia communities. They support locally produced products and services, create jobs, and stimulate economic growth. Madam Chair, last year, Nova Scotians supported local communities and businesses by investing more than $7.5 million in CEDIFs. CEDIFs do encourage innovation, entrepreneurship, and productivity throughout the province by allowing Nova Scotians to keep investment capital in their own local communities. A great example of this is the Colchester Cumberland Wind Farm, which has been able to raise share capital through the province's CEDIF program. Since 2007, the company has been able to bring in more than $1.2 million for the development of its wind field. And the CEDIF tax credits have allowed the wind field to reach even more investors from across the province. Madam Chair, last year, our department, along with Labour and Advanced Education, launched the Workforce Strategy, an initiative of Jobs Here. The Workforce Strategy lays out how the province will support Nova Scotia's workforce to develop the right skills for good jobs. In essence, the Workforce Strategy is about connecting people to opportunities to increase their skills, to increase their learning and training so that they can be ready for the jobs of the future. Madam Chair, over 40 small businesses in Nova Scotia continue to thrive with help from the Nova Scotia Business Development Program last year. The program, which encourages small business startups and helps existing businesses to expand, contributed a total of $300,000 to businesses in every region of the province this past year. Economic and Rural Development Tourism responded to the high demand for the program by increasing the funding that was available since its inception. Government will increase the fund to a total of $540,000 for the 2012-13 fiscal year. Madam Chair, it has been a year since this government implemented the Procurement Governance Initiative, an initiative that will ensure all public sector and entities such as hospitals, schools, municipalities, and government departments work together to get best value for the goods and services that they buy. Madam Chair, we estimate that public sector entities procured more than $2 billion during 2011. The Public Procurement Act allowed the province to develop a new procurement government structure, including a chief procurement officer for the province. In addition, Madam Chair, a procurement advisory group of public procurement professionals throughout the province has been created to identify efficiencies, share best practices, and implement greater standardization. The Act also mandates supplier debriefing sessions, a common vendor complaint process, a code of ethics for all public procurement professionals, and posting tender notices, winning bidder and award amounts online. All of these things lead to an even more transparency within our government. The Provincial Government Procurement Initiative helps advance the priorities of jobs here. It gives more opportunities for local businesses to develop the skills necessary to apply for public sector procurement, better preparing them to compete globally. Madam Chair, we have the Community Access Program, or CAP, which remains a valued resource in our rural communities. There has been recent discussion concerning cuts to this program in relation to the federal government's contribution. Madam Chair, I am here to reiterate today that the province will keep its commitment to provide $348,000 in funding to CAP sites. We are currently evaluating what the lack of federal dollars could mean for that program. We will be working with the communities and our stakeholders to determine the best way forward. Madam Chair, our Productivity and Innovation Division remains hard at work, creating and delivering programs and initiatives to help Nova Scotia businesses succeed and to thrive. The province is close to launching a new productivity and innovation strategy. This will ensure the activities and investments of government, along with those of key partners in the province, are coordinated and focused on our common goal of supporting innovation and productivity to grow our economy. During the last year, Madam Chair, we also continued to work on detailed research and analysis of high-growth sectors so that we have the information we need to leverage opportunities within them. To date, we have completed studies in the oceans technology and financial services sector, and we will continue to work with others, including information communication technology, aerospace and defense, and clean technology. In addition, Madam Chair, the Productivity and Innovation Division continues making valuable investments through the Nova Scotia Research Innovation Trust. This trust matches funding from the Canada Foundation for Innovation. In the last 10 years, the trust has supported more than 340 projects with over $66 million in funding to Nova Scotia institutions that receive national research funding. The trust funds have brought more than $100 million in additional investments in Nova Scotia-based research. The most recent investment was $1.8 million in a $4.1 million world-class research project to develop high-performance, low-cost lithium batteries. The research has strong commercial potential in the automotive, medical, and power storage industries. Madam Chair, our trade team continues its efforts to profile Nova Scotia's interest in the ongoing negotiations of the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, certainly with the European Union, CEDAW. We are working with experts. We are working with businesses and interest groups to fully understand what is in the best interest of all Nova Scotians. The European Union is a long-standing and important partner in Nova Scotia's international trade and investment. We look forward to enhancing that relationship through these negotiations. Madam Chair, helping rural Nova Scotia grow and prosper remains a priority for this department. In December, we announced strategic new investments in the creation of an economic council in southwest Nova Scotia. This regional economic council was supported by provincial, federal, and 8 municipal governments, with a provincial contribution of $142,000. This new council will work to extract and attract, expand, and retain businesses all throughout southwestern Nova Scotia. Through the direction of Jobs Here, the council will guide economic development in the area, build trust and collaboration among partners, and collaborate on a longer-term regional economic development structure. Madam Chair, I would also like to speak to the important work done by the Regional Development Authorities, or more commonly known as RDAs. RDAs work across the province to bring leadership. They help spur economic growth and development to their respective regions. They help with business startups, identify opportunities, and support the retention and the expansion of businesses in all areas of Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia's RDA plan Nova Scotia's RDAs plan and deliver regional development strategies and action plans that further the development of their communities. To ensure ongoing accountability, RDAs participate in mid-year reviews and annual audits. The evaluations contribute to the ongoing improvement of these organizations so that they can maximize their contributions to their communities. Our department's Regional Planning and Development Division employs field staff across the province to work with RDAs, to work with businesses and community organizations to foster economic development opportunities. Madam Chair, through Regional Planning and Development, ERDT invested over $7 million in businesses, economic development partners, and community organizations in 2011-12. This investment represents a direct, significant contribution to growing Nova Scotia's economy where it matters the most, in the community. In addition to all the valuable programs and initiatives we've had to help Nova Scotians, Madam Chair, we also recognize that a key part of boosting our economy lies right here within the province itself. Nova Scotia tourism is a $1.8 billion industry, an important economic driver in the province, and a key source of employment for Nova Scotians in every region. The industry helps support more than 22,000 direct jobs and generates provincial tax revenues of $126 million, which support essential services such as health and education. Madam Chair, the majority of the Tourism Division's $25.5 million budget goes directly toward product development, branding, marketing, partnerships in the provincial visitor information centers to build Nova Scotia's tourism industry. With prudent fiscal management, the Tourism Division continues to develop innovative ways to attract visitors to the province from key markets, including Ontario, the United Kingdom, Germany, and the northeastern United States. These places have been identified through comprehensive research on the part of ERDT. Key tourism indicators of 2011 were on par with 2010 and varied by region. These figures are comparable to other jurisdictions in this challenging economic environment. But let it be known, Madam Chair, we are not satisfied with these results. Through the new Nova Scotia Tourism Agency, the province is taking a new approach to tourism. We are working in partnership with the industry to create a long-term strategy for the sector that will promote innovation and competitiveness as part of government's Jobs Here plan to grow our economy. The Nova Scotia Tourism Agency will fall under the current budget of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism. The interim board and tourism staff are working hard on a number of measures to ensure we meet our objectives. Government and industry have been working in true partnership through the Long-Term Strategy Committee of the interim board. They are putting in many volunteer hours to analyze the results of our industry feedback and to develop a strategic framework. Madam Chair, we have reached out to tourism stakeholders and business leaders throughout the province. We are receiving feedback on strategic ideas that will help build the industry and allow Nova Scotia to reach its fullest capacity. We have been conducting a national executive search for a CEO to lead our new agency, one who can successfully design and implement the Nova Scotia Tourism Agency's final structure and exercise the strong, committed leadership the industry needs to build the sector. Madam Chair, we have a request for proposals for a tourism agency of record to help the province identify a strategic marketing partner, one that will offer flexibility and potential savings, and ensure the Nova Scotia Tourism Agency has the marketing support it needs to implement the annual tourism plans. We are also in the process of establishing a permanent board for the new agency, one that will attract a high caliber of industry and business leaders and work to ensure that Nova Scotia's tourism industry is highly competitive and brings economic benefit to the province of Nova Scotia. Madam Chair, this is an exciting time for Nova Scotia. Our time is now. Nova Scotia has been named a top global destination in 2012. Our natural assets, paired with an outstanding summer of major events, make this the year to come and enjoy everything our beautiful province has to offer. We are getting set to host some amazing festivals and events this year, including the return of the Tall Ships Festival, the relaunch of a Canadian icon, Blue Nose 2, the award-winning Celtic Colors International Festival, and the TELUS World Skins Game, just to name a few. We know, Madam Chair, our greatest assets is our people. The warm, friendly spirit of Nova Scotians is what keeps bringing our visitors back again and again. This year, we are encouraging all Nova Scotians to participate in the Visit My Nova Scotia program. We want every Nova Scotian to be an ambassador and ask their friends and relatives from around the globe to come and visit. The Visit My Nova Scotia program stems from our national pride in our spectacular province. We have so much to offer, and we want to let the world know that now is the time to come and visit Nova Scotia. And of course, there is the important work of our agencies. Madam Chair, I will start off with Nova Scotia Business Inc., NSBI, the province's business development agency. NSBI is governed by a board of directors made up of business leaders from various industries and regions throughout the province. The agency has 4 client-focused business units. They are business financing, trade development, venture capital, and investment attraction. NSBI helps Nova Scotia businesses and introduces Nova Scotia to the world. NSBI attracts global investment into Nova Scotia. The agency is client-centric, strategic, and it is proactive, growing key sectors of our economy with the Department of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism, and with many, many other partners throughout the province. Over the past year, our companies with NSBI have done business in 47 countries, places like the Caribbean, China, India, and Israel. Just in recent months, NSBI and its partners led trade missions to the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and the Caribbean. As for trade shows, they brought Nova Scotia companies to Oceanology International and the Game Developers Conference, just to name a couple. In the next few months, NSBI and its partners are headed to Germany for one of the biggest biotechnology shows in the world. It's seen firsthand the linkages our global-focused companies are making on the world stage. Madam Chair, I'm proud to say homegrown successes in the companies attracted to Nova Scotia are providing high-paying, world-class career opportunities for young Nova Scotians. They are generating new tax dollars and helping build a stronger economy. And they are bringing our expats home. And we know Nova Scotia has the ingredients to compete. In a recent KPMG report, Halifax ranked #1 among Canadian and U.S. cities in 4 industries: precision component manufacturing, software development, video game production, and international financial services. Madam Chair, this is great news for Nova Scotia. Through the work of NSBI, Nova Scotia is gaining recognition as a growing global financial services center. And in 2012-13, NSBI will continue to focus on proactivity, attracting new investments into the province. They will do this through foreign direct investment, strategic partnerships, domestic business growth and expansion, and generating awareness about Nova Scotia. Looking ahead, Madam Chair, by growing our domestic supplier base, we can facilitate partnerships with our anchor companies and leverage these strengths to attract more investment. We are seeing existing companies go further. We are seeing Nova Scotia companies working with us and investing to be more productive, to be more innovative, and to be more competitive. Madam Chair, we also have another one of our agencies in NovaCorp. As Nova Scotia's early-stage venture capital organization, and NovaCorp plays an important role in the province's Jobs Here plan. The young, knowledge-based companies in NovaCorp invest in and assist are innovative and globally competitive, and they create good jobs. These startups are vital to growing our economy. In 2011-12, InnovaCorp refined its business model to ensure all activities and investment-led, which ultimately improves the support provided to early-stage knowledge-based companies. We all know capital is the lifeblood of any early-stage company. Along with capital investment, InnovaCorp provides tailored, hands-on business guidance and mentoring to the companies it invests in. It also offers world-class incubation services and facilities, places Nova Scotia technology entrepreneurs that can call home. Last year, through InnovaCorp, the province made seed investments in 8 promising technology companies. With these new additions, the province's Nova Scotia First Fund, it now has 19 investments under active management. Several of InnovaCorp's recent investments were made through the new $24 million Clean Tech Fund that targets Nova Scotia's clean technology sectors. These sectors have potential to improve our economy, to improve on our communities and on our environment. The new fund has come at a time of ever-increasing international demand for clean technologies and solutions. And, Madam Chair, we look forward to helping bring Nova Scotia's green innovations to the marketplace. Last year, Madam Chair, InnovaCorp also launched the Nova Scotia Clean Tech Open, an international competition to find and fund highly potential early-stage clean technology companies. The competition also puts a spotlight on Nova Scotia. It puts a spotlight on Nova Scotia as an ideal location for these companies to grow. The goal is to attract the best clean technology companies in the world to Nova Scotia. The winner of the Clean Tech Open will be announced within the next few weeks. InnovaCorp also ran a provincial I3 technology startup competition in 2011-12. The competition's goal is to find and support early-stage Nova Scotia knowledge-based companies and encourage entrepreneurial activity right across the province. Since the pilot in 2006, the competition has received a remarkable 414 startups, 414 startup submissions, reflecting the high level of entrepreneurship right across the province of Nova Scotia. In the most recent competition, InnovaCorp attracted a record-breaking 142 submissions from across Nova Scotia, from Chester and Lawrencetown to New Glasgow and Chittycamp. This year, the overall provincial I3 winner was DenovaMed, a startup biotech company founded by Dalhousie University scientists and operating out of a new laboratory at the IWK Health Center. InnovaCorp also continues to play an integral part in the creation of the Regional Venture Capital Fund. This government, along with New Brunswick, have each committed $15 million towards the creation of this new privately managed fund, which will target opportunities throughout Atlantic Canada. InnovaCorp has been working on behalf of the 2 provinces to set up the fund and secure additional investors. Through InnovaCorp, we are also working to strengthen the capacity to commercialize Nova Scotia's post-secondary research and increase entrepreneurial activity at our universities and colleges. The knowledge economy, Madam Chair, plays a critical role in the future prosperity of this province. InnovaCorp's work to increase innovation, entrepreneurship, and business success stories in Nova Scotia is an important part of the jobs here, our plan to grow our economy. Madam Chair, Trade Center Limited, TCL, TCL creates economic and community benefits by attracting people to Halifax and to Nova Scotia. Their ability to connect people through events contributes to a prosperous provincial economy. In 2012-13, TCL is committed to ensuring that the events it hosts drive economic activity in Nova Scotia, with an estimated 750 events that will result in $70 million in direct expenditures. This year, TCL expects to generate combined operating revenues for Trade Center Limited and the Metro Center of $20 million from a broad range of events. A strategic events approach will align event attraction activities with Nova Scotia's key growth sectors, with a focus on attracting international convention activity in the oceans and life science sectors, where Nova Scotia is recognized as the leader. Province-wide event attraction by Events Nova Scotia will continue again this year. In 2012, Halifax will host the TELUS World Skins Golf event, while Yarmouth will host the World Junior A Hockey Challenge. Key major events or bids will include the 2014 World Under-17 Hockey Challenge, Cape Breton. 2013 Skate Canada International in Halifax. And in 2014, Canada Figure Skating Championships in Halifax. With its partners and through its activities, TCL will continue to promote the growth of Nova Scotia events sector to drive the economy. This will benefit the entire region. We also have, Madam Chair, Film Nova Scotia. Film Nova Scotia grows the audio-visual industry here in Nova Scotia. It grows it by supporting local producers and promoting the province as a premier filming destination internationally. The corporation offers loan and investment programs to support audio-visual production in Nova Scotia. It administers the Nova Scotia Film Industry Tax Credit. This credit, which ranges from 50% of eligible labor for film in HRM to 60% in rural Nova Scotia, is one of the highest in Canada. It makes Nova Scotia an attractive shooting destination. Film Nova Scotia, Madam Chair, provides equity investment, provides development and marketing programs to the local audiovisual industry. Madam Chair, these programs enable the industry to leverage funds available through federal programs such as Telefilm Canada and the Canada Media Fund, and private sources such as broadcasters, distributors, and investment funds. In addition, the corporation offers production services, including a locations resource and reference center, and supports professional development, training, marketing, and distribution for the Nova Scotia audiovisual industry. Film Nova Scotia strives, Madam Chair, to create new opportunities for producers in the province. In 2011, Film Nova Scotia entered into an exciting new partnership with Eastlink TV to fund Nova Scotia-based television production. Eastlink committed an initial amount of $1.3 million and is expected to annually contribute approximately $700,000 to the fund. Nova Scotia generated approximately $100 million in production activity in 10-11. This marks an increase in production over the previous years. Madam Chair, we have the Waterfront Development Corporation, which just completed its 18th consecutive year of generating a financial surplus from its operations of waterfront properties in Halifax and Lunenburg. During this time, these surpluses have enabled waterfront development to invest more than $30 million in public infrastructure. This infrastructure has led to the Halifax and Lunenburg waterfronts becoming the two most visited destinations in the province of Nova Scotia. Waterfront development is moving development forward on the waterfronts in the capital region and in Lunenburg. The Canard Block mixed-use development on the Halifax waterfront will see construction commence next year. In Dartmouth, the design for a mixed-use residential building on the property known as WDC1 is almost complete. In waterfront development and HRM are partnered to develop a comprehensive plan for Dartmouth Cove. On the Bedford waterfront, the $30 million residential commercial development known as Dockside Development is well underway. The work of Waterfront Development Corporation will continue to leverage strength on all waterfronts for economic advantage and the enjoyment of all Nova Scotians. Madam Chair, as you can see, we have made great strides in helping to propel Nova Scotia from a stagnant economic outlook to a vibrant, growing, and competitive province. Through Jobs Here, the province has invested in hundreds of businesses in every region of the province. Our various programs and our investments are working to create a better provincial economy with businesses that are more innovative, businesses that are more productive, and businesses that are globally competitive. Madam Chair, this budget will help us stay the course in helping Nova Scotia businesses excel. This budget will help us create the right economic conditions for growth and prosperity. Madam Chair, this budget will help us take advantage of the great economic prospects that are before us. Prospects that will change the trajectory of this province. I look forward to another year of Jobs Here, another year of building our provincial economy, and another year of great opportunities for this province. Thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I will take my place, and I would be more than happy to take any questions directed my way.
I now recognize the honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I certainly want to thank the Minister for his opening comments. Lots of interesting things there that certainly we'll get into it in quite a bit of detail over the next few minutes and into tomorrow and next week. Also like to welcome Simon and Joyce to the House for the estimates process. It'll certainly be interesting, and I'm sure you'll have lots of things to add to the debate for sure. And I'd also like to welcome Stephen Lund from NSBI and the department staff that are here. I can't see them, so I don't know for sure, but I'll take your word for it that they're certainly up there. So I really am looking forward to this process. It's a sad thing to say that I was actually excited going through the line by line for the budget, because this is what I do. Some things I'm not so comfortable with when it comes to topics and discussions and debates, but when it comes to economic development and it comes to jobs, certainly coming from Cape Breton and knowing the challenges that we've had in those departments. And it's a provincial issue. It's certainly not just a Cape Breton issue. But, you know, looking at those things and trying to figure out what the best decisions are with the taxpayers' money is something that I'm definitely looking forward to. And it's, you know, we talk about these things politically when we're in the legislature, Madam Chair, and you kind of forget sometimes what kind of, first of all, we're talking about taxpayers' dollars and being stewards of those dollars, but you know, when you really look and dissect these budgets, it's a lot of money. You know, $187 million for economic development initiatives that certainly, you know, are there to provide stimulus and keep the economy moving and certainly growing. But, you know, they're taxpayers' dollars. And what I see, without question, is this is a vital link, and this department and how these dollars are spent are the differences between keeping families here and not. And we all know the Fort McMurray stories. Everyone's got one. But for us, and certainly in Cape Breton and in Glace Bay, it seems like things are only getting worse. And those 2 on and 2 off, and those 21 and 9 trips to Fort Mac and to Curl Lake and to all over Alberta and the West seems to be an easy choice for people. And that's an unfortunate thing that I hope that we can halt as a provincial government, and this is where the rubber hits the road, if you will. You know, things are great in Halifax, and the minister mentioned several times since I've been here, and certainly in the last little bit and this evening, about the ship's contract and the Lower Churchill project, which will run ashore in Cape Breton, and the offshore work being performed by Shell. All great things, and again, anything that stimulates the economy and adds to the economy, you know, we're all for, and it's a stimulant, no doubt. And as they say, that the economic studies and the economic information would suggest, you have to have a strong capital. Halifax is absolutely booming. It's a great city. We're all proud of it. Had the fortune to be here a lot as a kid, playing sports. Went to school here at Dal, so it's a pretty great place, and we love it here. And even now as an MLA, like I hate to leave Glace Bay, but it's nice to come to Halifax and enjoy what it all has to offer. But the reality is, and I know that it's always a political conversation, a political argument, but the rural areas are struggling. And Cape Breton is one, Yarmouth is the other, but you take any of the counties and any of the regions of the province, we're losing our people. And that's an important thing to remember, Madam Chair. And we've got to make sure we do things for Yarmouth and for Digby and for Pictou and for Antigonish and for Cape Breton to make sure. The minister mentioned early in his comments about jobs here when talking about his plan that we're seeing the results. And you know, we use those expressions and we use that rhetoric sometimes, but at the end of the day, it is difficult. Again, outside of Halifax, we're not growing jobs, and things aren't taking place as the minister suggested in his opening comments. Those employment numbers, if you know, you look at the provincial average, the Halifax is less than the national average, so that obviously weights down what our provincial numbers would be for unemployment. When you look at the regions, those numbers fluctuate. I've been looking at those numbers for the last 3-4 years monthly, and I think that anyone that looks at those would agree. They go up and down, they're cyclical. Obviously, there's a part-time job, and that's what we've been experiencing here as a province. There's a lot of part-time job stimulation and injections, but obviously they're part-time jobs. So they're the type of things that affect those numbers, and so I don't think that they're the kind of things we want to rest on our laurels on and hang our hat on the fact that numbers that may drop by a percentage point in one region or the other. You know, again, this is something that keeps our kids here, and it's $187 million, a significant piece of the provincial coffers and the provincial pie. And the minister and I have had many conversations about this publicly, certainly in question period, about the need for job targets. And we'll get into some of the initiatives that are used by the Department of Economic, Rural Development and Tourism to stimulate and to support businesses and those types of things. But I certainly do have questions, and I have concerns around you know, how you go about making an investment when there's no specific job targets. And I've used this analogy many times in the legislature, but if you're a private business, if you're a startup, and I know that there's line items for entrepreneurs and for innovation and those types of things, startups, and again, we'll get to those in detail, but no business, no entrepreneur goes to a bank without a business plan. I've been there myself. I understand how these things go, and you don't get that money without showing your financials, showing your growth, showing your opportunities. If you're showing financials, obviously you've got human resources built into those, so obviously you can create. You don't have to have a specific number as a province and hit that number. That doesn't become your ceiling or your floor. It just becomes a range of jobs. If you're investing $187 million, as we are here with Economic and Rural Development and Tourism for the 2012-2013 year, then naturally we've got a way to create a range. And if we hit that range, we've succeeded as a department. And if we haven't, then obviously there's questions. So I think as we get into discussions about the estimates and where the jobs, where the money's going to be and where the jobs are going to come from, I think that's an important conversation to have. And I certainly look forward to some of the minister's reactions on that stuff with of course, the help of the department officials who are here and who are absolutely, you know, to say it up front, who are the people who are on the ground for the province. Their job isn't political. Their job is to create employment for people in this province. So that's an important thing. And I certainly do look forward to hearing the minister's candid comments when we're outside of the politics of the question period and we're just talking as two people who are concerned about the economic future of our province, what he really thinks and where he thinks we can grow, where he thinks the ideas are. The minister mentioned briefly at a few occasions about opportunities and regional opportunities, and that's the thing that I support and I think is so critical to this process and to the Economic and Rural Development and Tourism Department. Every region has opportunities, and if you go if it's Yarmouth or it's the South Shore or if it's Central Nova Scotia, if you're at the Eastern Shore, Cape Breton, of course, we've got opportunities. And one of those, you know, the opportunities for Cape Breton, we've got the port, obviously, which has been a hot one. And I remember during an economic forum a few months ago, it was an incredible thing that Provincial Energy Ventures, without any public dollars, invested $75 million into that port. So for us, that's a great sign. Does the Sydney port have to compete with Halifax? Absolutely not. Does the Sydney port have to augment Halifax? It would probably be beneficial depending on what we're talking about here. But I think if you look at the model for the Sydney port and what it offers, you know, in contrast to Halifax, or certainly in contrast to the Melford terminal, I think we're looking at bulk carrying and commodities, and that makes sense. And, you know, the amount of jobs that the Halifax Harbour has and the Halifax port system, I mean, it's massive, and Sydney's never going to be there, but that's okay, because if there was an extra 50 jobs into the Cape Breton economy, they're significant. And if it's an extra 100, that's even more significant. And so, you know, these things are opportunities that we have that we certainly have to take advantage of. Another interesting number the minister mentioned was $1.8 billion with a B. That's the tourism injection here in this province. Tourism, to me, is one of those pillars of, and not to me, to everybody, is kind of what we are. From end to end of this province, we have beauty, we have history, we have culture, we have incredible landmarks, things we've done. My own neighborhood was the initial site of Guglielmo Marconi's first transatlantic message in 1902. So I grew up we used to go up there and shoot pucks off the side of the monument, not knowing really what it meant. Yeah, I'm rambling too long here. I'm getting too honest. But as you get older and you kind of understand what these things mean and their significance, it's an incredible thing. So we've got tremendous opportunities. Tourism is certainly going to play a key role. But to be perfectly honest, and I know that there's been some steps being made, and certainly within the budget, which again we'll get to line by line and then sort of philosophically later, the fact that tourism is so important, but from my experience and my understanding, tourism operators and tourism agencies, you know, all over the province, they're not feeling that love. They don't feel as though, they feel they can do more, and they feel that there's opportunities left on the table, if you will, for growing our economy, growing that vehicle traffic, growing the visits to Nova Scotia, all regions of Nova Scotia, and that's important. I think that that's where your research comes in. You've got to have that primary research and figure out where people are coming ashore, whether it's through New Brunswick, whether it's from Newfoundland, whether it's by air, whether, you know, the impact of the Yarmouth Ferry, which I really do. I know that the department has undertaken a tourism kind of strategy that moved around to talk to community stakeholders to try to figure out you know, what things are important to them. I've got a pretty good feeling, based on the few that I attended, that the Yarmouth Ferry is going to come up pretty high. Now, I know that the government, we disagree probably on, you know, what the vessel is. It's kind of turned into that the cat wasn't the right boat. You know, if that's the argument, then so be it. But I really do believe, and I don't think we've had the heavy research to show that investment wasn't worth what it brought in. And again, we'll have that conversation certainly. And I'm not here to turn this into an argument already, but I think that's one that's important. And economic development and tourism, obviously, they're critical pieces that go hand in hand. So that's a conversation that we certainly look forward to having. Back to Cape Breton with the Centre for Sustainability and Energy and the Environment, there's our future. They're the things that I know the Minister of Energy talks about a lot in terms of where we're going to go with wastewater management, with renewable energies, with those types of things. That's the future. So we're famous in Canada for our research, as the Minister said, but we're not so famous for the commercialization of that research. So at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about stimulating economic dollars from the research that we do at our universities and our institutions and our facilities. So all important things, and you know, this gives us a chance to crack open the department and look at some of these things and figure out where we're going, and I think it's my job as an opposition critic and as a part of the official opposition here in the province to find these things out. I know, you know, from the bottom of his heart, listening to the minister and debating these things back and forth, that he believes that his plan is the answer, and from the bottom of my heart, I hope he's right, because we're in a crisis mode, certainly in rural Nova Scotia, and that's not fear-mongering, that's the truth. I don't need anyone to correct me on the fact that people leave, and if it wasn't for these on and offs to Fort McMurray, and if it wasn't for these companies who see the value in Nova Scotia's workforce to get them there and get them back so they can keep their roots and see their families, we would be in a lot of trouble. So it's my job here and my role to make sure that we're doing our part and we're spending this money wisely. And again, I look forward to the next little bit where we see what the minister has in mind and where these dollars are going to be spent, and how we can see a clear indication and the writing on the wall that we're going to produce. 1 minute? Okay. That we're going to produce these jobs, because Nova Scotians are looking for these things. They're looking for opportunities to work. They're looking for opportunities to stay home, to keep their families here. You know, when we look at the backdrop of what's happening with education, with healthcare, with all the social programs that mean so much to us, $187 million is a significant investment for our province. And when you look at some of these numbers, of course, there's all kinds, and I'll be the first one to say as we go line by line, you know, where we can certainly see the value and the wise investment. But when you talk about the Nova Scotia Jobs Fund, that was the former IEF, that was criticized by this government when they were in opposition, I think it's important to see and to question and to evaluate how has this changed that it protects those dollars so much more. You know, I said this publicly, it's in hands that I believe NSBI would be the stewards of those kinds of dollars. I think it's to the tune of about 73 million. So I think they would be the ones that would look at this and make sure that those dollars are well spent. So again, I want to thank the minister for his opening comments. I want to thank the staff for being here. I look forward to the conversations and the debate and the questioning the next couple days. And with that, Madam Chair, I will take my place. Thank you.
Thank you. The time allotted for the Committee of the Whole House on Supply has elapsed. I now recognize the honourable member for Hammonds Plains Upper Sackville as the acting Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and that I do now ask that you rise and report progress.
The motion is carried. The committee will now rise and report progress to the House. Order. The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on Supply reports.
That the Committee of the Whole House on Supply has met, has made some considerable progress, and begs leave to sit again.
Thank you. I now recognize the honourable member for Hammonds Plains Upper Sackville, the acting Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and that concludes the government's business for today. We will sit tomorrow, April the 20th, from the hours of 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And after daily routine, we will go into estimates. And if time permits, we will call public bills for second reading number 5, number 9, number 11, number 13, number 17, number 20, number 22, number 24, number 30, and number 32.
Thank you. Would the member mind repeating the hours for me?
9 to 3 tomorrow, April 20th.
Thank you. The motion is that the House does now rise to meet again tomorrow, April the 20th, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. All in favour say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion is carried. We stand adjourned.